The stars looked different from Alpha Centauri. Captain Sarah Chen stood on the observation deck of the Pathfinder Earth's first interstellar vessel, watching unfamiliar constellations through the reinforced viewport. Humanity had finally reached beyond their solar system, and the universe awaited. "Captain, we're detecting an anomaly at coordinates 227.45 by 118.32. Lieutenant K reported from her station. "Energy signature unlike anything in our database." Chen straightened her uniform. First contact protocols had been drilled into the crew for years, but theory was about to become reality. Yellow alert. Maintain distance and open all scanning channels. The anomaly resolved into a massive vessel, at least 3 times the size of the Pathfinder *. Its hull gleamed with an iridescent sheen like beetle carapace, all angles and protrusions without obvious weaponry. No response to standard greeting protocols. Communications Officer Rodriguez announced, fingers dancing across his console. "Wait, we're receiving something." The main view screen flickered to life, revealing a being that sent an involuntary shudder through the command crew. It stood nearly 3 meters tall, with a chitinous exoskeleton and multiple limbs, ending in what appeared to be natural blades. 4 glowing eyes studied them with predatory intelligence. The creature spoke, its voice resonating through the ship's speakers as the translation matrix struggled to interpret. New species. Unregistered. Physical parameters. Acceptable. Commander Jackson Rivera stepped forward, standing beside Chen. "What does that mean, acceptable?" The alien's mandibles clicked in what might have been amusement. "It means you qualify for the hunt." The transmission cut abruptly. Proximity alarms blared as the alien vessel accelerated toward them. Red alert. Battle stations. Chen ordered. "Helm, evasive maneuvers. Get us out of here." The Pathfinder wasn't built for combat. Earth had naively assumed their first extraterrestrial encounters would be peaceful or at least cautious. The research vessel banked hard, straining its engines to maximum as the alien ship closed the distance with impossible speed. "They're launching smaller craft," Rivera reported, studying the tactical display. 8 vessels on intercept course. Chen gripped the command chair. "Security teams to all decks. Prepare for possible boarding action." The ship shuddered as magnetic grapples latched onto the hull. Metal screamed as something began cutting through the outer plating of Deck 7. "This isn't a first contact," Rivera realized, grabbing a pulse rifle from the emergency weapons locker. "It's an invasion." Chen accessed the ship-wide communication system. "All personnel, this is the captain. Intruder alert. Unknown hostiles boarding on Deck 7. All non-essential personnel evacuate to emergency shelters. Security teams converge on breach points." The first security team reached the breach site just as the hull gave way. The aliens poured through the opening, moving with terrifying speed despite their size. The security team's weapons discharged in a coordinated volley, but energy blasts merely scorched the creature's armor. One alien raised what appeared to be a ceremonial spear. It glowed briefly before discharging a pulse that turned 3 security officers to ash. "They're hunting us," Communications Officer Rodriguez whispered in horror as they watched the security feed. Throughout the ship, screams echoed through the corridors as the aliens methodically moved from deck to deck. They didn't kill indiscriminately. They selected certain crew members, testing their reflexes before either killing them efficiently or marking them somehow and moving on. In the chaos, Rivera gathered survivors in the maintenance crawl spaces between decks. "They can't fit in these tunnels," he explained, helping a wounded engineer through the narrow passage. "We need to reach the escape pods." On the bridge, Captain Chen made her final stand. "This is Captain Sarah Chen of Earth Vessel Pathfinder *. We came in peace." The lead hunter, larger than the others, approached her with almost ceremonial slowness. "Peace is irrelevant. The hunt is everything. Your species shows promise. You will provide good sport." Chen activated the bridge self-destruct sequence as the creature's blade descended. Rivera led 37 survivors, all that remained of the original crew of 112, to the auxiliary shuttle bay. "We have to warn Earth," he said grimly as the shuttle broke free from the dying Pathfinder *. "The galaxy isn't what we thought, and we're not explorers anymore." Behind them, the research vessel exploded in a brilliant flash that temporarily blinded the shuttle sensors. As the light faded, Rivera saw the alien mothership turning, seemingly unconcerned with the escaping shuttle. They weren't being pursued. They weren't worth hunting. Yet, 6 months after the Pathfinder disaster, Earth had transformed. Orbital defense platforms bristled around the planet, and the moon had become a military installation rather than a scientific outpost. The surviving footage from the encounter played on a continuous loop in the United Earth Defense Council's command center, each frame scrutinized for any weakness in the alien hunters now identified as the Krathul. Commander Jackson Rivera stood at attention before the council, the weight of his survival heavy on his shoulders. "With all due respect, counselors, conventional weapons won't stop them. You've seen what their armor can withstand." Admiral Johansson leaned forward. "Then what do you suggest, Commander? Surrender?" "No." A new voice interrupted as Dr. Anya Petrova entered the chamber, carrying a tablet filled with biological schematics. The evolutionary biologist had spent months analyzing the Krathul footage frame by frame. "We fight them, but not on their terms." The council chamber fell silent as Dr. Petrova approached the central holographic display. She loaded her data, and a 3-dimensional model of a Krathul hunter rotated before them, anatomical layers peeling away to reveal internal structures. "Look at the musculature," she said, highlighting dense tissue clusters. "Extremely powerful, especially in the upper limbs and striking appendages. Their cardiovascular system shows adaptations for explosive speed and strength." General Santos frowned. "You're telling us what we already know, Doctor. They're stronger than us." "Yes, but that's not the complete picture." Petrova split the display to show human anatomy alongside the alien. "The Krathul are ambush predators. Powerful, fast, lethal, but designed for short bursts of activity. Their metabolism burns hot and fast." Rivera nodded slowly, remembering. During the attack, they would hunt intensely, then withdraw to their vessels for periods of time. "Exactly." Petrova highlighted the human model. "Meanwhile, humans evolved as persistence hunters. Our ancestors didn't kill with claws or overwhelming strength. We chased prey until they collapsed from exhaustion. We're literally built to outlast." The implications settled over the room. Admiral Johansson broke the silence. "You're suggesting we turn their hunting instinct against them." "I've reviewed Commander Rivera's reports," Petrova continued. "The survivors escaped through maintenance tunnels too small for the Krathul. They adapted to changing circumstances. When confronted with a technologically superior species, they improvised." Rivera stepped forward. "The Krathul hunt because they've never faced a worthy opponent. They expect their prey to run and hide. What if we do neither?" Dr. Petrova nodded. "I'm proposing Project Marathon, a specialized response unit that leverages human endurance, adaptability, and teamwork. We can't outmuscle the Krathul, but we can outlast them." The council chambers erupted in debate. General Santos pounded the table. "This is absurd. You want us to fight superior aliens with jogging." "Not jogging," Rivera countered. "Strategic exhaustion, psychological warfare. The Krathul see themselves as apex predators. They've never faced prey that refuses to accept that role." Defense Minister Chen, who had remained silent, finally spoke. "Dr. Petrova, Commander Rivera, you have 1 month to assemble your team and demonstrate a viable strategy. If you fail, we proceed with conventional military response plans." As they left the council chambers, Rivera turned to Petrova. 1 month isn't much time." She smiled grimly. "It's enough. The Krathul have spent millennia perfecting the art of the hunt. We've spent our entire evolutionary history perfecting the art of not dying. That evening, as candidate profiles began streaming into their secure database, Rivera studied the footage of the alien hunters one more time. Their movements were precise, efficient, beautiful in their lethal way. "You've never been tired," he whispered to the image. "You've never faced an enemy who simply refuses to fall, but you will." The first candidates would arrive tomorrow. Former marathon runners, ultralight hikers, wilderness survival experts, humans who had built their lives around the simple, stubborn refusal to stop when their bodies screamed for rest. The Krathul had awakened something ancient in humanity, something that predated civilization itself. The quiet certainty that when all else failed, humans could always take one more step. The marathon facility, nestled deep in the Rocky Mountains, had once been a luxury resort. Now its sprawling grounds, extensive trail networks, and varying elevation made it the perfect training ground for humanity's most unusual fighting force. Commander Rivera watched from the observation platform as 38 candidates completed their morning endurance assessment, a brutal 20-kilometer run through mountain terrain while carrying 30 kilograms of equipment. The digital readouts showed their vital signs, heart rates barely elevated despite the punishing pace. "Impressive group," Dr. Petrova said, joining him at the railing. "Especially Chen and Diaz. They've been trading the lead for the past 5 kilometers." Rivera nodded. Elena Diaz, former Mexican Special Forces, specialized in high-altitude operations, and Lin Chen was an ultramarathon champion before enlisting. Both can maintain this pace for another 30 kilometers, according to their profiles. Below them, Sergeant Elena Diaz pulled ahead slightly, her movement efficient and measured. Unlike traditional military training that emphasized raw power, marathon selection had prioritized efficiency, recovery speed, and psychological resilience under prolonged stress. "They're still thinking like conventional soldiers," Rivera observed, "trying to win the race." "They'll learn," Petrova replied. "This isn't about winning quickly. It's about still being in the fight when your opponent has nothing left." The afternoon session transitioned to the facility's centerpiece, a massive indoor training arena designed to simulate the Asterisk Pathfinder's Asterisk corridors. Holographic Krathul stalked the mock spacecraft, their movements painstakingly programmed based on the attack footage. Technical specialist Mai Zong monitored the simulation from her workstation. "I've incorporated the latest movement algorithms," she explained as Rivera entered the control room. "These projections are accurate to within 95% of observed Krathul hunting patterns." "Good," Rivera said. "Today we'll see who can adapt. Divide them into teams of 4, random selection." The candidates, still recovering from the morning's exertion, looked up in surprise as the assignment boards flickered with their team designations. Rivera's voice echoed through the facility's speakers. "The Krathul hunt as individuals seeking personal glory. Humans survive as teams. Your objective isn't to defeat the hunters. It's to exhaust them. Each team must keep at least one holographic hunter engaged for a minimum of 40 minutes without sustaining a fatal simulation hit." Murmurs spread through the assembled candidates. 40 minutes against creatures that could move faster than human reflexes could track seemed impossible. "Begin," Rivera commanded. The first 3 teams failed within minutes, approaching the challenge with conventional tactics: ambushes, direct confrontation, or evasion. Their simulated deaths were quick and educational. Team 4, led by Elena Diaz, took a different approach. They separated into pairs, constantly communicating, drawing the hunters through the narrowest passages of the simulated ship. When one pair showed signs of fatigue, they would tag out with the fresh pair, maintaining constant movement. "They're making the hunters work for every step," Petrova noted with approval. By the 30-minute mark, the holographic Krathul showed simulated signs of metabolic strain, their movements becoming less fluid, reaction times slowing incrementally. "They're getting it," Rivera said quietly. In the arena, Lin Chen narrowly avoided a hunter's strike, ducking into a maintenance shaft where the larger craft hull couldn't follow. Her partner, former parkour athlete Miguel Santos, drew the frustrated hunter through a series of tight turns and vertical climbs designed to maximize energy expenditure. When the 40-minute timer sounded, Team 4 emerged battered but victorious. The holographic hunters froze in place, their simulated biological metrics displaying clear signs of exhaustion. "That's one way to hunt," Rivera told the assembled candidates afterward. "Not with superior weapons or strength, but by turning your opponent's nature against them." The Krathul have never faced prey that refuses to be caught, prey that becomes the hunter through sheer persistence. He looked at their faces, exhausted, determined, beginning to understand. "Tomorrow we add the real challenge," he said. "You'll be wearing these." Maison wheeled in a rack of sleek exoskeletons, not to make you stronger or faster, but to enhance what humans do best: endure. As the candidates dispersed to recover, Rivera turned to Petrova. "They're learning. But will they be ready in time?" Satellite imagery had detected unusual activity in the Kuiper Belt. Something was coming. The alert came at 300 hours. Rivera was reviewing simulation data when the proximity warnings flashed across his screen. A Krathul hunting vessel had bypassed the outer system defenses, its stealth technology rendering it nearly invisible until it was already approaching Mars orbit. Target trajectory suggests Mars colony as the destination, Lieutenant Commander Hayes reported in the hastily assembled briefing. Colony evacuation would be impossible in the available time frame. Rivera studied the tactical display. How many hunters aboard? Thermal signatures suggest a small vessel, likely a scouting party, 5, maybe 6 individuals. Dr. Petrova's expression darkened. "They're testing us, seeing if we're worth a full hunting expedition." Rivera nodded. "Then let's give them something to think about." Scramble Marathon Team 4. We deploy in 20 minutes. The Marathon transport entered Mars orbit under stealth protocols, touching down in Valles Marineris, 30 kilometers from the colony. Team 4 disembarked in full exosuit gear, the lightweight frames enhancing endurance while monitoring vital signs and core temperature. Colony defense forces are on standby, Rivera informed the team as they gathered around the holographic terrain map. But they won't engage unless absolutely necessary. This is our show. Sergeant Diaz checked her equipment one final time. "Rules of engagement, Commander. Capture if possible. We need intelligence, but survival comes first." Rivera activated the mission display. The Krathul vessel landed here, near the base of Olympus Mons. Our scouts report they're moving toward these cave systems, likely planning to use them as hunting grounds for the colonists. Lin Chen studied the cave network. Those tunnels connect to the geothermal stations. The hunters could use them to access the colony from below. Exactly. Rivera highlighted a section of the map, which is why we're going to get there first and set the stage. The cave system has varying oxygen levels and temperature gradients. We know how to handle those conditions. The Krathul may not. The team deployed across the Martian surface in lightweight rovers, reaching the cave entrance an hour before the hunters were expected to arrive. Maison calibrated their equipment while Rivera positioned the team. "Remember your training," he told them. "We're not trying to outfight them. Make them work for every step. Team Beta will initiate contact and lead them through the Eastern Passage. Marathon pattern, 15-minute rotations. Team Alpha will set environmental traps at these junctions." Diaz checked her specialized weapon, a compressed air launcher that fired hardened carbon projectiles, designed not to kill but to inflict painful, distracting injuries. "Let's see how they like being the ones hunted." The wait was brief. The Krathul approached with predatory confidence, their massive forms silhouetted against the Martian landscape. Up close, they were even more imposing than the holograms, nearly 3 meters tall, with natural armor gleaming under Mars' pale sunlight. Lin Chen, positioned as bait, let herself be spotted. The lead hunter's 4 eyes locked onto her immediately. She feigned fear, sprinting toward the cave entrance. The Krathul pack followed, exactly as predicted. What followed was a masterclass in controlled exhaustion. For hours, Marathon Team 4 executed a perfect rotation strategy. When one member showed signs of fatigue, another would take over, leading the increasingly frustrated hunters through narrowing passages, oxygen-thin sections, and fluctuating temperature zones. 6 hours in, Rivera observed the first signs of Krathul fatigue, slightly slower reaction times, heavier breathing, more frequent rest periods. The hunters remained lethal, but their biological limitations were beginning to show. They're not used to prey that doesn't tire, Zhang observed from her monitoring station. It's confusing them. The critical moment came when the lead hunter, clearly struggling but refusing to abandon the chase, followed Dias into a narrow chamber with slippery mineral deposits. Exhaustion affected its normally perfect balance. The creature stumbled, its heavy frame crashing against the cave wall. Dias didn't hesitate. She fired 2 carbon projectiles into the hunter's unprotected joint areas, then retreated through a passage too small for the Krathul to follow. The wounded hunter roared in pain and frustration. It activated its communication device, its translated words echoing through the caves. The prey does not tire. The prey hunts back. News of Mars colony's successful defense spread quickly throughout the solar system. The footage, carefully edited to emphasize the Marathon team's effectiveness, boosted civilian morale. Humanity could fight back. What the public didn't see were the classified intelligence briefings. Deep space monitoring stations had detected multiple large signatures moving toward the solar system. The Krathul weren't sending another hunting party. They were deploying a fleet. In the Marathon Facilities Command Center, Rivera studied the projected invasion routes. 3 weeks until they reach Earth orbit. How ready are our teams? Admiral Johansson shook his head. We've expanded training to 20 teams, but against a fleet this size, we're looking at a planetary siege. Commander, Lieutenant Hayes interrupted. We're receiving a transmission. It's broadcasting on all frequencies. The main screen flickered to life, revealing a Krathul unlike any they'd seen before. Larger, more heavily armored, with ritual scarring across its exoskeleton. When it spoke, the translation matrix rendered a deeper, more resonant voice. I am Supreme Hunter Kivor, Guardian of the Eternal Hunt. Your resistance on the Red World has been noted. The massive alien leaned closer to the camera. For 50,000 cycles, the Krathul have hunted inferior species across the galaxy. None have ever turned the hunt back upon us. Rivera felt the weight of every eye in the command center. Such audacity demands response. Kavor continued. I invoke the ancient hunt code. I challenge Earth's champions to face mine in ritual combat on the ice moon of your gas giant. If your hunters prevail, humanity will be recognized as equals rather than prey. If they fail, your species will serve the hunt for all time. The transmission ended, leaving stunned silence. It's a trap, General Santos declared immediately. They're isolating our best fighters while their fleet positions for attack. Dr. Petrova studied the freeze frame of Kavor. Maybe not. Look at those markings. They're consistent with religious significance in predatory societies. The hunt code may be genuine. Even if it is, Johansson countered, we'd be fighting in their style, on their terms. Everything we've learned says that's suicide. Rivera approached the display, enlarging the image of Europa, Jupiter's ice moon. Not necessarily. Europa's environment is perfect for our strategy. Subsurface oceans, ice tunnels, variable gravity wells. If this Kivor is following some kind of predatory honor code, he just offered us exactly the battleground we have chosen. The Defense Council debated for hours. Earth's forces remained outmatched in conventional warfare. The Marathon program showed promise but hadn't been tested against elite hunters. Taking the challenge meant risking everything on a single confrontation. I volunteer Marathon Team 4, Rivera finally said. With some modifications, we'll need Specialist Zhang's technical expertise and the Okafor twins' deep-sea experience. Admiral Johansson studied him. "You understand what's at stake." "Completely. Win or lose, we'll learn more about them. And if we win, we change humanity's place in the galaxy." 3 days later, the Marathon shuttle approached Europa. Through the viewport, Rivera could see the massive Krathul flagship in orbit, nearly a kilometer long, bristling with weapons that could reduce Earth to cinders. Kavor's voice crackled over the communication system. "Your arrival is acknowledged. The hunt begins at dawn." Beside Rivera, Alina Diaz checked her equipment one final time. "They expect us to fight like them," she said quietly. "They'll be disappointed," Rivera replied. "We'll fight like humans. The long game. The waiting game." As the shuttle touched down on Europa's icy surface, Rivera gathered his team. "Remember, they're playing a game they've never lost. We're playing one they've never imagined." In the distance, the Krathul landing craft descended like a predatory bird. Supreme Hunter Kavor had arrived to make history, though not in the way he intended. Europa's surface glittered under Jupiter's massive presence, the gas giant dominating half the sky. The temperature hovered at -160 degrees Celsius, deadly to unprotected humans, and challenging even for the Krathul's biological systems. Supreme Hunter Kavor stood nearly a head taller than his 4 elite hunters, his exoskeleton adorned with trophies from 100 worlds. "The rules are simple," he announced, his translator rendering his clicking speech into flat English. "No projectile weapons. No orbital support. 72 of your Earth hours to eliminate the opposing team." Rivera nodded, his face impassive behind his environmental helmet. Beside him stood his chosen team: Sergeant Alina Diaz, Technical Specialist Maizong, and twin brothers Jamal and Jabari Okafor, former deep-sea engineers whose extraordinary cardiovascular efficiency had made them Marathon's top performers in extreme environments. "One addition," Rivera stated. "Europa has unique hazards. We suggest transponder signals so neither team becomes permanently lost beneath the ice." Kavor made a gesture that might have been amusement. "Prey concerned for the predator." "Acceptable. The signals will cease functioning when a combatant's life signs terminate." With the terms established, both teams retreated to their respective base camps. The Krathul positioned themselves on a flat plain, setting up what appeared to be ceremonial markers. "They're establishing hunting territory," Zhang observed through her binoculars. "Traditional apex predator behavior." Rivera adjusted the team's specialized environmental suits. Developed by Zhang, they incorporated both thermal regulation and oxygen recycling systems, far more efficient than standard equipment. "Remember the strategy," he told his team. "We split immediately. The Krathul hunt as a coordinated pack. They're not expecting us to separate." Diaz nodded. "Their pack hunting relies on driving prey toward waiting ambushers. If we scatter in different directions, their tactics fall apart." The starting signal, a flare launched from Kavor's ship, lit up Europa's dark sky. The hunt had begun. Marathon Team 4 immediately split into their assigned pairs. Rivera and Zhang headed for the massive ice ridges to the north, while the Okafor twins moved east toward a region of known subsurface lakes. Diaz, the fastest and most agile, headed directly south, deliberately leaving the most obvious tracks. Kavor's hunting party followed their training, 3 hunters pursuing Diaz, while Kavor and his lieutenant tracked the twins, exactly as Rivera had predicted. Beneath Europa's surface, the environment became humanity's greatest ally. The vast network of subsurface tunnels, carved by tidal forces and liquid water movements, created a maze that favored smaller, more adaptable humans over the larger Krathul hunters. The Okafor twins reached the first subsurface lake, a vast chamber filled with liquid water maintained by Europa's internal heat. The brothers, with their specialized diving equipment, slipped into the dark waters just as Kavor and his lieutenant arrived. They entered the water. Kavor's lieutenant clicked in disbelief. The temperature would kill most species. Kavor studied the water's edge. The Krathul were capable swimmers but avoided cold water when possible. Their exoskeletons lost crucial flexibility at extreme temperatures. "They force us to follow or concede," Kavor rumbled, removing his ceremonial armor. "We follow." Meanwhile, Diaz had led her 3 pursuers through increasingly narrow ice tunnels, forcing the massive hunters to crawl through passages that she navigated easily. Their frustration was evident in their increasingly erratic movements. "How long can the prey run?" One hunter clicked to another. "We have pursued for 6 hours without rest." "They must tire eventually," came the response. "All prey tires." But Marathon Team 4 had trained for exactly this scenario. When Diaz began showing signs of fatigue, she activated her transmitter, signaling Zhang to begin her phase of the plan. Zhang, who had circled behind the hunters using an alternate tunnel system Rivera had mapped, deployed her carefully designed environmental traps, localized temperature fluctuations that forced the Krathul to expend additional energy regulating their body temperature. 20 hours into the hunt, the first hunter made a critical mistake. Exhausted and disoriented, it fell through a thin ice shelf into a pressurized pocket. The transponder signal flatlined. In the command center on Earth, Admiral Johansson watched in stunned silence. "They're actually doing it," he whispered. "They're hunting the hunters." 36 hours into the hunt, Europa's icy landscape had become a battlefield unlike any in galactic history. 2 more Krathul hunters had fallen, one to a cleverly disguised crevasse prepared by Zhang, another to oxygen deprivation after the Okafor twins led it through a series of hypoxic ice tunnels. Supreme Hunter Kavor, for the first time in his centuries-long existence, felt something unfamiliar stirring in his consciousness. The humans should have collapsed from exhaustion long ago. Instead, they maintained their maddening rotation strategy, always keeping one fresh team member visible while others recovered. "This defies hunting logic," Kavor growled to his remaining lieutenant as they regrouped on the surface. "They are physically inferior yet persist beyond biological reason." His lieutenant's breathing came in labored bursts, frost forming on his exoskeleton. "Perhaps they are not the prey we assumed, Supreme Hunter." Kavor's 4 eyes narrowed. Such a statement bordered on blasphemy against the hunt code. In the Marathon Team's mobile command post, Rivera monitored his team's vitals. All showed expected signs of strain but remained within operational parameters. The specialized suits were performing beyond expectations, recycling body heat and optimizing oxygen consumption. 40 more hours and we win by survival alone, Rivera told Zhang as she returned for her rest cycle. But Kavor is adapting. He's called his lieutenant back to conserve energy. Zhang removed her helmet, her face lined with exhaustion despite her controlled breathing. "The hunt code forbids outside intervention, but I've been monitoring unusual energy signatures from their ship. I think they're preparing to cheat." Rivera frowned. "Can you confirm?" "Not without better equipment. Our portable sensors are limited." Rivera made a quick decision. "I'm sending the Okafor twins back to our shuttle. They can use its sensors too." A violent tremor interrupted him, knocking equipment from shelves. Europa's ice groaned around them. "That wasn't natural," Zhang said, checking her instruments. "Focused energy discharge. They're using ship-based weapons to reshape the battlefield." Rivera's communication unit crackled to life. "Commander." Diaz's voice came through, strained and urgent. "They've collapsed the northern tunnel network. Jamal is trapped, possibly injured." Fear, sharper than any he'd felt during the Pathfinder disaster, cut through Rivera. They had anticipated honorable combat from a species that prided itself on hunting prowess. Instead, Kavor was changing the rules rather than facing defeat. "Zhang, get to the shuttle and signal Earth. Document the violation of terms. Diaz, hold position and conserve energy. I'll find Jamal." As Rivera navigated the treacherous ice tunnels, his suit sensors detected increasing seismic activity. The Krathul weren't just clearing blocked passages. They were deliberately triggering ice quakes to flush out the humans. He found Jamal pinned beneath a fallen ice column, his suit integrity compromised, but life signs stable. "Commander," Jamal gasped as Rivera worked to free him. "They're not following their own rules." "Fear makes even apex predators unpredictable," Rivera replied, echoing Zhang's earlier observation. "Can you move?" Jamal tested his injured leg. "With support." "Where's Jabari?" "Heading for the shuttle with Zhang." "We need tow." Rivera's words died as a massive form appeared at the tunnel entrance. Kavor stood silhouetted against the faint light, his hunting spear gleaming. "Fascinating," the Supreme Hunter rumbled. "You came for your wounded rather than abandoning them to save yourself. Inefficient. Illogical." Rivera positioned himself between Kavor and Jamal. "Human logic. We hunt as a pack too, but we don't sacrifice our own." Kavor tilted his massive head. "Your species continues to surprise. No matter. The hunt ends now." As the hunter advanced, Rivera activated his final contingency, a localized ice charge placed hours earlier. The ceiling between them exploded in a shower of frozen shards, temporarily separating predator from prey. "This way," Rivera urged, helping Jamal through a narrow side passage. "We've got one last card to play." The endgame would take place at Europa's South Pole thermal region, where Zhang had prepared their most ambitious trap. If they could reach it in time, the Supreme Hunter would learn the true meaning of human persistence. Europa's South Pole thermal region formed a stark contrast to the Moon's otherwise frozen landscape. Here, subsurface heating created a network of steaming vents and liquid water pools that broke through the icy crust. The environment was primordial chaotic, perfect for Marathon Team 4's final stand. Rivera helped Jamal into position behind a natural ice formation. "Zhang, status." "Thermal grid is active." She responded through the comlink. "Diaz is in position as bait." Jabari has the shuttle sensors aligned to monitor Kavor's approach. "Good. Remember, we don't need to defeat him, just outlast him." The plan was elegant in its simplicity. The thermal region's natural heat would force Kavor's exoskeleton to work harder to maintain temperature regulation. The patches of thin ice and sudden temperature shifts would drain his energy reserves faster. Most importantly, the region's unique electromagnetic properties would prevent any further interference from his orbiting ship. Diaz's voice came through the comm. "Contact. Kavor and his lieutenant are approaching from the North Ridge. They've abandoned stealth. They are coming straight in." "As expected," Rivera replied. "They're frustrated, impatient. That works in our favor." Supreme Hunter Kavor moved with deadly purpose despite 50 hours of continuous hunting. His ancestral armor gleamed with condensation in the thermal region's relative warmth. Behind him, his lieutenant showed more obvious signs of fatigue, slower movements, labored breathing. Diaz appeared briefly on a ridge above them, then disappeared into a steam vent. Kavor roared a challenge, his massive frame launching into pursuit with surprising speed. "He's taking the bait," Zhang confirmed, activating thermal pattern alpha. The prepared heating elements embedded around the region began cycling, creating unpredictable temperature zones. The Kraffel lieutenant faltered first, its biological systems struggling to adapt to the rapid changes. Kavor pressed on alone, single-minded in his pursuit of Diaz. His movements, while still dangerous, had lost their earlier precision. The great hunter was tiring. Rivera watched the telemetry data on his helmet display. Kavor's estimated energy reserves were dropping steadily. "He's almost at breaking point." Diaz, final phase. Sergeant Diaz emerged from cover exactly 60 meters from Kavor, close enough to draw his attention, but far enough to maintain a lead. The Supreme Hunter charged after her, following her through a series of tight passages that required constant direction changes and energy-intensive climbing. For 15 exhausting hours, this deadly dance continued. Kavor pursued relentlessly, while Marathon Team 4 executed perfect rotations, always keeping one fresh team member visible to maintain the hunter's focus. At hour 71 of the 72-hour challenge, Cavor stumbled for the first time. His massive frame crashed against a rock formation, his breathing ragged and uneven. When he tried to rise, his limbs trembled visibly. Rivera approached alone, unarmed, maintaining a cautious distance. "Impossible," Cavor rasped, his translator struggling with his labored speech. "No prey. Outlasts. A supreme hunter." "We're not prey," Rivera replied simply. "We never were. Humans didn't evolve to be the strongest or fastest. We evolved to endure, to keep going when anything else would stop." Cavor studied Rivera with all four eyes. "What are you?" "Persistence hunters. Our ancestors chased prey until it collapsed from exhaustion, not with claws or venom, but with sheer determination." Rivera extended a hand, a gesture incomprehensible to the Krathul. "The hunt code says the stronger hunter prevails. Today, that's us." When the 72-hour mark finally arrived, Rivera's team stood undefeated. Cavor, barely able to stand, activated his ceremonial transmitter, sending a signal to his fleet. "The hunt is concluded," he announced formally. "Humanity has earned recognition." As the Marathon shuttle departed Europa with the victorious human team, Rivera watched Jupiter's massive form recede in the viewport. Something profound had changed in the galaxy today. In the coming months, the Krathul fleet withdrew from Earth orbit, honoring the terms of the challenge. Diplomatic channels opened, tentative at first, then with growing confidence. Cavor, transformed by his defeat, became an unlikely advocate for understanding the species previously seen only as prey. Humanity had earned its place among the stars not through superior firepower or technology, but through their most fundamental quality: the stubborn refusal to surrender, no matter the odds.